Kirk, when I was probably year 2 out in Colorado, I had a conversation with my dad prior to a national series race. And I had just bombed a big workout, and I don't know what was happening. I was saying something about, I really hope I can put myself in it. And he's like, you know what? It's fine. You're to the point I don't worry about your race results anymore. And it was just a really calming thing to hear. That I had probably had 7 or 8 straight months of just getting it done. And prior to that, like a year and a half where I only had a few misses. And he just kind of reassured me simply that I know you're at a place right now where win, lose, or draw, whatever circumstances arise, you're just not going to be the one that screws up your race. I know you'll do fine. Like, you may not win. You probably won't win, but you're not going to self-sabotage. You're going to get the most out of your fitness. You're going to be fine. And I haven't always had that since, but I was in a really good spot with my fitness and my confidence and my health all at one time. And I feel the same way about your racing now. And I tell people this from time to time, where you just get this sense of peace about their results. Someone you're working with, and they have a big race coming up, and you're just not that worried. Like, you're worried that you might have screwed something up for them, but you know they're going to take care of whatever happens. And you've strung together now result after result after result. You just keep taking care of business. And I think you're at that stage right here and right now. And that's a cool place to be.
Well, shucks, Brakken. Thank you. And you know what? I think it has as much to do with just consistency over time. More than anything, I had a 5-month period of time when we first started this podcast back in 2020, where I didn't run for 5 months. 2 stress fractures in my foot, cuboid sesamoid issue, and not that I was running a lot when I started ramping back up, but it has been, knock on wood, almost 4 full years of running without a major setback, which I have never had in my career. And so I think a lot of it has to do with that. And when you're able to train consistently, whether just like you don't fall off the wagon at some point or you don't get injured, you don't need to cram. You can taper in or feather the throttle into races and show up available because you're never making up for lost time at any point. And when people try to make up for lost time, it's a little more Russian roulette with what you get on the race line, like when you toe the line. And I haven't had to do that. I've been able to just be like, you know what? My fitness is good. I'm going to coast into race day, and it will be there when it needs to, and it continues to be so. So, like, I think that has more to do with it than anything. And that's where you were at in Colorado.
The consistency does 2 things. Yeah, it was. And that consistency does 2 things. And the first is the part most people think about, which is, I built great fitness, uninterrupted quality sessions, long sessions, consistent volume, time practicing running over and over and over. You just get to a great place with your fitness. And like you said, you get to coast in rather than to rush and cram. But the second piece is that you never really have to worry about your body being unsure with the work. You get to race day and you start running and your body knows what to do.
Yeah.
You get on a trail, your body knows how to adjust the effort. You get on the roads, your body knows how to adjust the effort. You get in a pack and you understand, this is what I'm doing, here's the consequences. You become so many workouts in a row strung together, you just become very well acquainted with what your lines are as a racer. And so many new runners, we talked about this a few weeks ago, are so obsessed with what pace should I be running. And your body just is kind of like, I'll take care of that. You just like stay in the cockpit and don't take your attention away from me. Don't take your foot off the throttle. I'm going to take care of the pace for you.
You almost feel it out. You don't need to look at your watch for pacing. You don't need to over-calculate. People often come to me, and maybe they do to you as well, with these like elaborate race strategies. Like, I have a marathon. I'm going to go out in 6:04 pace, not 6:05 and not 6:02. I'm going to go in 6:04 pace, and then I'm going to, right at mile 2 after the hill, I'm going to really crank down on the downhill, and I'm going to do this and that. And they split hairs on something that doesn't need a roadmap. They need to feel it within themselves. And I think a lot of people get caught up in, like, I don't know, breaking it down into a science in which it doesn't need to be. Once you are in tune, you are in tune, and it's a feeling. You feel it instead of I don't know what, like, calculate it. Does that make sense?
It does. And at the same time, I think some of that's needed early on because you don't have the perspective.
Yeah.
And you don't have the feel. So you have to overplan. It's your only safeguard against going out way too fast or way too slow or whatever. But I think early on, your body confirms or denies what your watch is telling you.
Right.
You have to look down and be like, oh, that is a 7-minute mile. How did that feel? Where you're at the stage right now where the watch confirms what your body's telling you. Mm-hmm. You're like, yep, this is what I should be running. Then you look down and you saw 5:26 for that mile. Yep, that seems right. Or hey, that feels better. But it doesn't have these nasty surprises waiting for you.
Yeah. Know what other game I like to play? I do this every recovery run. I don't do it on quality days as much. Is the guess your heart rate game. Like, this feels like 133. Mm-hmm. And then I look and be like, 134. I was one beat off. Come on, Kirk, you're better than that. So I want to get it to the beat based on how I'm feeling, just off of feeling it out and then guessing. That's a fun game I play. But, the interesting thing, so I guess the listeners don't know what you're talking about, potentially, some of them. So I ran the Afton 25K this weekend, and I won. I won by over 7 minutes, which for me on that course, I was happy with. And what I find, I couldn't do it if I tried. Excuse me. I went back. This is my 4th year in a row racing. I've won twice now, and I've taken second twice. Taken second to Tyler German. Beating that guy's a lost cause for me right now. But he wasn't there this year, which was nice. I got to run out front. But anyways, so I looked back, and my fastest to slowest result. This is a trail with 2,000 feet of gain and, potentially slightly varied conditions. 37 seconds difference between my fastest and slowest time on that course over a 4-year span. I'm 4 years older, and I've run within the same half a minute in an hour 40 race. I couldn't do that if I tried, and I was 2 seconds different from last year. But this year was a solo effort with about a 5 BPM less heart rate throughout. I did coast a little early before pressing. Like, I couldn't have, you could have paid me $1 million to get that right. I couldn't have got it right intentionally. It's just funny how that plays out.
It's funny. This is not what we were talking about, but it reminds me of a memory from college. Our coach had us do a very interesting, fun workout one year in cross country. And there was I want to say it was a 1.5 mile loop. Right around 1.5 miles. Maybe it was a 2K loop. I'm not sure exactly what it was. But you had to predict your time and then go out and run it. And you no one was allowed to wear watches, and people went out like every 30 seconds. So it was basically like a time trial. And you were just seated randomly. So you couldn't say the person in front of me guessed they were going to run 10 minutes. So I guess I'm going to run 10 minutes, and then we're going to just try to keep the same gap between you. Mm-hmm. It was random seated. It was basically just who can predict a pace and then run it with no watch. And then the strategy became, do you try to predict the fastest you think you can run and then just race it, knowing that I'll get pretty close to it? Or do you try to predict the pace you're most comfortable running? Like I know what 6:40 feels like. I'm just going to run 6:40 pace. Mm-hmm. There was no prize for the fastest. It was just who was the closest to their predicted time. And it was really, really interesting trying to run, feeling it out entirely, but not being able to confirm it on your watch. And so for you to run an hour 42:07 and an hour 42:09, it's just like you couldn't do that.
No.
If you wanted to.
But
you did.
Well, what's interesting about that too, and it seems to happen to me. So you've raced on the cross country Wisconsin State high school cross country course, Ridges Golf Course in Wisconsin Rapids. You never went to the cross country state meet?
I never qualified.
Well, I went all 4 years.
I watched.
Okay, it's a legit course. It's got some hills. It's a fair course, but it's not a road. It's not a pancake flat race. And so I ran the exact same time, and I think I've told you this, at the state meet, my sophomore, junior, and senior years. 16:48 to the second. 3 years in a row. My sophomore year, I did it healthy. I was healthy. Junior year, I missed the first month of season because of a back issue. And then senior year, I missed the first 3 weeks of season because of a stress fracture. So my later 2 years, I was compromised, point being. But exact same time to the second there, 3 years in a row, which I couldn't have done if I tried either. So maybe it's just like my thing. My curiosity is what your coach, what was the coach's purpose for that? Like, why would your coach have you do that versus time trial? Like, I'm curious.
I think it was a pure fun, like Friday afternoon workout. I don't remember a talk afterwards that, all right, this is why we plan paces, or this is why we give splits during races so that we can't trust what we've got. And it was on trail in rolling terrain, so it was hard to feel. But I don't remember a so what about it. I remember it was just like a fun thing, and we probably had like tacos after or something like that.
Sounds like a good day.
I think it was just a team building exercise.
Well, I like
Got
it.
everyone talking before and after. Everyone's stressing before what they're going to do in their strategy, and afterwards everyone's talking about what went right and wrong. And I consider myself a metronome, and I tanked on that. I overthought it, and I tanked. I was way off.
Did you run faster or slower? What was your approach?
I decided I was just going to run easy pace. I think I just said I'm going to run 7-minute miles. And then I second guessed myself the entire time.
And you ran too
fast. I ran too fast on that downhill, so now I'm going to pull back. I was way slow.
Yeah, that would be a fun game. I'll touch on just one or two things about the race, and then we'll get to the topic of the day, which I think is relevant to what I had done, and I think a lot of people who's racing multiple times in close succession in the summer. But I wore the Nike Vaporflies on the trail. Now, it's my first time wearing like a road shoe in a trail race. You've been to Afton with me once or twice, right? And how would you describe the trails? There's some very runnable sections, and then there's some technical rocky sections. I would say it's a good mix of like smooth and then sections of single track, rutted up stuff. What was your take on it?
From what I remember, and again, this is probably 3 years ago now.
Yeah,
but when it was like I divided it. 50% of it was just smoothish, nice trail running. 25% or less was like really fast and flat, and 25% was you're going up and down, and it's rocky the entire time.
It's about right. Yeah. Climbs are about 200 to 250 feet, and there's not much gradual. When you're going up at like 15% grade. Some sections are steeper, and when you're going down, it's very similar. I would say it's not a lot of like 5% grinders. It's more like you're either going up, you're going down, or you're going flat. And I wore the Gen 1 Vaporflies. So the newer models have more of like the grip on the shoes is more indented. It can grab things like carpet or, I don't know, maybe if there was a little bit of sand or dirt, it grabs. The Gen 1 is like pretty flat. There's not much tread in there. It's meant to maximize surface area,
not at all,
touching the roads. And I just want to touch on a misconception about trail shoes and what is necessary. And I may be a road super shoer on the trails now at any chance possible. As long as you're not in like deep sand or mud that is truly wet and slick, even on the trails, you do want to maximize surface area of your shoe touching the ground. Just like you want to maximize surface area of your shoe touching the ground on the roads. That's why road shoes have a fairly flat terrain. That's why car racing tires are super flat and smooth. They don't want any part of that tire not touching the road because that's how you get max grip. And so as long as you have a course that's dry and not too slippery on the sand front or the depth of the mud, or if there is any, you don't need lugs. Lugs are, in fact, may give you worse grip on terrain like that. And so what I found is I went for my warm-up run on the morning of the race. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice. Screw it. Let's see what these things do. So I wore my Vapors for my warm-up, which is a sin in itself. And I was like, oh, my God, there is no difference. In fact, it might even be a little better on the flats and on the stuff where, like, it's packed terrain. And so I chose to wear them. And it was a great decision. And as long as you have a low profile super shoe, some with big stack heights, you're going to get a little risky, especially if it's technical. I found it to be a very productive shoe. Maybe a net wash with some of the downhills that had rained this week, so I did have to tiptoe around stuff where I wouldn't with lugs, but I also could utilize the super shoe on the flat sections, and I was notably more efficient there. So I may find a way to wear these things, like as long as it's not bad conditions. And I wanted to get your take on that because you're the shoe guru.
Well, a long time ago, Macaulay and I were sitting around talking after a run, and we said, is traction maybe the least important piece of a trail shoe? And for years, we had raced in the Innovate X Talon. And then we started in Colorado running trails in the Nike Lunar Racer, which is not like the Vaporfly bottom, but they serve the same purpose. It's just smooth and to take as much weight off the shoe as possible. And as long as the trail wasn't muddy, it was just fine. In fact, the soft and smooth grip likes hard packed more than having some lugs stick you off the ground likes it, because like you said, it's just less surface area, less contact. The dividing line is as soon as it gets muddy. If you encounter real mud, you're screwed without lugs. But if you're not going to, as long as the shoe has an upper that keeps you from falling out of the side of the shoe, you're fine. It's just that in our area of the world, most of the time, I can't get by with a road shoe. Because if we get any rain where I run, you don't want that. And we get rain relatively often.
You know, I even think I felt, because the plate on the Vapors, at least the ones that feel pretty stiff, like it's hard to bend that shoe. It almost felt like I've never felt a propulsion going uphill on anything, but because that plate didn't want to be bent, I almost feel like it gave me just a titch of a pop going uphill, like just a little bump in the right direction when I was on my toes, because that plate didn't want to be in that position. And so it was like, does the super shoe translate to steep uphill if it has a very stiff plate? And I'm like, it just might have. And I know this is a Pandora's box that we maybe don't need to open, but it changed my mechanics going uphill. Like when I was up steep, it almost scooted me up the hill instead of like run tall and high knees. It's almost like I wanted to lean forward and let the plate just push me. And normally I would have tried to be more upright. And it's all like kind of, I'm sorting this out in my head. And so for any of you trail runners out there, I'm not suggesting you do this, but it was a really good experiment. And I'm going to continue this experiment. And I'm sure it's going to bite me in the ass when I hit the wrong race or the wrong terrain. And then it's going to be great until it's not. But really surprised and pleasantly surprised with how that panned itself out. So I just thought that was an interesting side note to the race.
Well, you're not crazy. You hear this from runners, and Joshua Reed said this the other day to me, that a curved plate does help you uphill a little bit. It makes you a little bit more efficient. Where you give it back is the wrong grade downhill. The plate doesn't want to do what the downhill is doing. If you have to get on your heels and brake, like it doesn't help you at all. But if it's just a vertical race, a plate can actually be helpful. Where plates really don't help you is when it gets technical.
Right.
When you have to start moving your feet side to side or hitting off camber, then you're in trouble. And that's, I think, why you're talking. It was a net wash where you gained a little uphill, you gained on the flats, and you probably gave it back on some of the downhills and all the technical spots.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you had like I think like Monterey Spartan race, or something where you would never wear these for a OCR race, but like West Coast Fire Road.
Glenn wore them for Monterey.
Or what?
The Vaporflies. Now he put a VJ bottom on them.
Of course he did.
But
so I think
he's wore them for multiple OCR races.
Fire Road, hard packed, Rocky Mountain, West Coast type racing, given the right course, I think that shoe would assist you in being faster. if it wasn't too technical on some of the descents. Anyways, we could probably stop that part of the conversation, but I found it interesting. So should we hop into the topic that was your idea today? Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did this thing where you raced just what was it, 2 weeks apart?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
And an athlete I work with this weekend messaged me and said, "Hey, is it crazy if I jump in a local 10K? Her goal race coming up is a 30K next weekend." And there are people that are constantly like, my races just happen to land like this. I have back-to-back races or 3 races in 4 weeks. If you're going to do it anyway, how do you go about doing it? Well, how do you maximize both race results? And what do you do, most importantly, in between the 2 races in order to do so? And I think your races highlighted how this can work and how it comes together late, because you did not feel good in between.
Yeah, I guess just to talk about myself briefly, and then we'll get to spreading the knowledge, is I'd gone into the half marathon at Grandma's pretty sick, and then I paid for my effort, meaning like I felt sick all week the following week. Like I still wasn't back. I still have kind of a sore throat. I must have some weird bug. But anyways, I didn't have one session between the 2 races that felt good. Not one. I cut my quality sessions in half, tried to keep the intensity the same, but scaled back and felt, I'm going to say bad is the right word, on everything. I was a little sick still. I was recovering from Grandma's half, and I just let it be what it would be. I knew I wasn't going to change my fitness in 2 weeks, and I knew the best way to race well 2 weeks apart in fairly big races over an hour long was to just trust my body was going to recover the way it needed to, and it would show up just in time. And that's exactly what happened. I wasn't a hero. I backed off my volume a bit, and I just trusted that it would be there for race number 2 instead of trying to change my fitness in that window, which is a mistake. I just said the best way to run well is to show up available again. And the first day I felt good in 2 weeks was when that gun went off and I started racing. Even the warm-up felt like crap. It was one of those days. But when it melted away and suddenly I was back, baby. I was recovered from Grandma's half. I had probably benefited from the effort just slightly. And I went out there and floated on Saturday when I literally had a piano on my back for 13 days prior. And I think the word trusting the body of work that has preceded all of it, is step 1. The caveat is, have you done the body of work before your cluster of races? I did. And then the other part is the exit strategy. Once you're done with your cluster of races, how do you get out of it and back into fitness? That's the stuff that's fun to chat out. But if you've done the work beforehand, you just sort of sharpen the end of your spear just a little bit and then trust it'll be there again on the next race day if it's preceded by months of good training.
Yeah, I agree. When you get done with one race, you're almost guaranteed to second guess your life choices up until the second race starts. If you've raced the first race hard, you're not going to feel good. We're very used to coming off of race week and just getting our bodies back together and then easing back into training or jumping back into training and saying, I'm going to feel like crap for a while and then my legs will come around in a few weeks. But what we're not used to doing is trying to mentally gear up for another like effort while feeling like crap. And so you have to just right from the start go into it expecting that and saying it's going to come back around on race day. And that's my only goal, is that it's back by race day. And every day up to then is a liar, so I don't pay attention to it.
Truer words haven't been spoken. And the tricky thing about that is, let's say race 1 goes well. You go out and you have a good race. Sometimes there's that like, I want to go crush it again. Like, I am on a tear right now. I am going to double down even more. Like, when you leave a good race, you're more motivated than ever. At least I am. You're not demotivated. And so the idea might be like, I'm going to go out and swing again on my quality session 3 days after my race because, like I am feeling myself right now and I am going to just fuels more momentum and I'm going to do the thing. Nope. This is where the ego check actually
That's a liar too.
Exactly. Well, talk me through that. Tell me why it's a liar, because you're exactly right.
But because you're riding high. But we talked a couple weeks ago about when you come out of a big demanding ultra and you're like, I'm planning 2 weeks down. In day 5 or 6, you're excited about something and you're like, I'm ready. But your mind is excited. Your body's still trashed.
Yep.
Then don't conflate the two. That's where we are now. You're fired up about your race. Your fitness is good. Your body is feeling good, but it doesn't mean it's ready because you're on borrowed time.
Yeah.
You have another effort in you, but you're not guaranteed of 2. So if you know you have another effort, you're feeling good, you save that for the race. You don't waste it by crushing your next workout and then realizing, oh, the waiter just brought the bill out. Now I have to pay this. But I thought I was saving my money for Saturday, and now here it is on Wednesday, and I'm broke now. That's not what you want. So your body's a liar, whether it feels good or bad. Our only goal is to feel good when the gun goes off on race day.
And you won't know it, most likely, until the gun goes off on that second race day, and you're like, oh my God, thank God it's here. Well, no, don't thank God that it's here. Thank yourself or your coach for making right training decisions in between and not being a hero, choosing to show up available, right? Like, you are what you did 10 days ago, right? That whole saying that we've brought up a number of times. The 10 days ago thing means, like, how did you respond those 5 days after your first race that are now going to help set you up for your next race? And the answer isn't be a hero again and go have another big training session, because I can handle that. I race again in 10 days from this quality session. Like, it'll be fine. The answer is erring a little bit more on the side of recovery. And I think there's also another component to, okay, so we want to know, like, how much do you run between races and how do you pick your quality sessions? Because we're not talking like, okay, screw it, you're just going to run easy for 2 weeks and then go race again. Like, that's not what we're talking about at all. In fact, we're talking about like micro dosing quality sessions, just enough to break through the rust again and then get you ready and available on the next race day. And what I find sort of a cheat code here, and you're not going to be surprised when I say this, is if these are 2 races in which you take a good amount of impact. I had a half marathon on the roads and then a 2,000 feet of gain up and down trail race. Get your butt on the treadmill and do incline work for your quality sessions, because I did 2 of the 3, any sort of stimulus in that time was uphill. You take minimal structural damage while still touching the right aerobic systems. So 2 of my sessions were 0 damage. Like, let's get my structure back, but still touch the systems I need for race day. And I think there's a lot of magic to when you've taken impact in a race and you're going to take it again, which most races require impact, right? That there's a cheat code to, like, okay, I'm not going to do mile repeats. I'm going to do 6-minute repeats on the treadmill at 15% instead today. And I think that is maybe one of the biggest keys between races, is just reducing the impact of the quality sessions, literally by going uphill. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I fully agree. And I also think that this is something that turns people off, because they think, oh, these guys are talking 15% incline, 40% incline, 30, whatever it's going to be. And we are. That's true. But that's for our training. Incline could be 4%.
Right.
It could be 6% incline. It doesn't matter. It's whatever is a reduction from impact for you, where you start to think, I am noticeably running uphill. Yep. But I haven't really changed my stride yet. That can be the sweet spot for you. That can be 4%. When I do my 6% intervals, I feel like it's not flat, but it doesn't feel like a hill, but it's like a 50% reduction, it feels like.
I agree.
In pounding. By the time I'm up to 15 or 20%, it's like I'm not hitting the ground at all. But even as low as 4 or 6%, you're going to see less pounding, and that's really key. So don't let this be like, I have to do a hill workout. This can be your quote-unquote flat intervals. Just reduce it enough to whatever allows you to run this thing.
Yeah, you're right. I do really like 6% as well. I think that might be the sweetest of sweet spots between flat and hill running.
6 or 8 for me, yeah.
Yeah, 6 is nice. You have to work just slightly more for each stride, yet it still feels like flat mechanics. It feels like a powerful stride is required. a powerful open stride at 6%, which
Yeah.
I like. Let's play a little game here. And I want you to start. Let's use the 2-week. Let's use the 2-week example. Let's use the 1 week and the 2-week example between big races.
Okay.
Why don't you walk the listener through? And let's say these are races that are going to take, like, it's not like a mile on the track. It's like, hey, I'm racing 5K and up. I'm going to take a hit and I'm going to go all out in these races. So let's assume damage has been done in the first race, I guess is what I'm getting at. You got a week between races. Walk me through, they're Saturday races. Walk me through Sunday all the way up to your next race. What you would, just general, what would I do on this day, and then let's do a 2-week cycle. Because I think these are important.
Mm-hmm. So I treat them entirely different. 1 week in between. That is a 7-day, maybe an 8-day from Saturday to Sunday race, Friday to whatever it's going to be, but it's a 1 week apart. You do not have enough time to change your fitness for the better in that week. Yes, you could argue you probably could, with the right workout, have a lab notice one metric improve in a week, but not if you take 2 days to recover from the first race. Now you're out of it. So I don't try having a maintenance dose. I don't try having a minimum effective dose. My only goal from race 1 to race 2 is recover and then touch upon the skill of what I'm going to need. My quality work is now only skill-based. I do not care about engine because it can't be fixed. It can't be improved. All it can be is just regenerated. So that's what the goal is. So let's say it's a Saturday race. Sunday, this is incredibly important with a race only 7 days away or 6 days away. Sunday must have some activity to it, and it must take no damage.
Tell me
So
why.
we're immediately into... Go ahead.
And tell me why. It's just interesting.
We don't have enough time to screw around. We can't deal with an extra day of stiffness or soreness and being unproductive on Monday or Tuesday because we didn't move Sunday. We also can't compound the damage you took Saturday. So going out for another run, if you're not accustomed to running high mileage and running back-to-back days or doubling, that's not useful either. We only have 7 days. Each one matters. We can't screw anything up. We're in don't screw it up mode. So Sunday is active recovery. You must be moving. You must be hydrating. You must be trying to get your body functional again. That's where I start.
Okay.
You on board with that?
Yeah, I want you to keep walking through the week.
Okay. So then Tuesday, the first day I can run without soreness, I am running, but it's light. For me, this is going to be an uphill on the treadmill day.
Should you run if there is soreness? Like, let's say your calves are still a little sore or your quads are a little sore, but you've already taken a day or two away from running after your race, but it got you good. What do you think? Do you still run a little?
On those days, with 1 week only, I'm not messing with trying to do too much, but I don't want to be super rusty either. So I'm okay with 2 straight days of no running, 3 if need be. But that third one, I'm going to try to start either doing it uphill or I'm going to do a full warm-up, bike for 20 minutes, go hit a few light strides, bike for 10 minutes, maybe try a 10-minute run at the end, but I'm trying to plant the seeds for getting myself ready for race day. I don't want to go too long. I have, and I'll give an example for it later, I've gone longer without it, but it's really, really dicey. Again, we're in don't screw it up mode, so that means don't be too stiff on race day and don't be beat up on race day. So it's very often on that day, that first day back to running when things are sore, I am constantly deciding during the run if it's appropriate or not. And this might be a day. I did this last week. Last week was kind of my turning point in training where my crazy soreness and inflammation that I've been getting started to recede. But I did a run where I basically did aerobic intervals. I don't think I ran for longer than 4 or 5 minutes ever during the run. And then I'd stop and I'd do a systems check and I'd maybe stretch my calves or like put a little pressure hip to hip, stand up on my toes, and then maybe change the incline a little bit and then do another 3 or 4 minutes. So I ended up getting 48 minutes, I think, or 50 minutes, but I never ran longer than 5 because I was constantly checking, is this appropriate? Am I going to be able to work tomorrow or not? So that's how I work with that first day back. And then no later than Thursday, but no earlier than Wednesday, I'm doing my maintenance dose skill, not even maintenance dose, my skill work of whatever I'm going to do that weekend. The shortest possible quality session with the longest possible recovery without making it an utterly useless workout, to just turn my legs over, run good form, get my lungs pumping, get blood, heart rate, everything racing for a bit, and then shut it down before anything can possibly happen. But just reminding my body of what the job is and that it can do the job. And then I'm easing in again Thursday, Friday, or just Friday into the race, knowing that nothing's supposed to feel good until the gun goes off. That's my week.
I like your week. I'm going to give just slightly more specifics. Like if somebody's like, I don't know how to read my body's signal. What you outlined is exactly how I go about things. I'll just outline it on exact days. Like if I had my way, and this is what I would do.
Do it.
But yeah, I think you're exactly right. All you're trying to do is get your body back to status quo. And if it goes perfectly, it won't be back to status quo until literally race morning again. Like best case scenario. You should have no expectation of feeling great at any point during that week. Maybe your last shakeout run the day before the race might be like, okay, I think I'm okay today. I'm not sure. But you're not giving yourself an opportunity to test what your legs are really capable of that day. So you don't know until that next day. So don't go proving to yourself that you're ready again in training anywhere in between those races, right? That's a mistake. So if it were me, Saturday race, I agree about moving on Sunday, but I go for a hike with my wife. We go for a little putz around bike ride around the lake, like with my mountain bike at an easy pace. I'm not getting my heart rate up on that session. I'm just like moving my body. I agree with you. And I think doing that starts the recovery front sooner versus sitting on the couch scrolling TikTok all day and saying, well, I just need to get off my feet. I don't think that's the right answer for the day in its entirety. So I agree with you there. Monday, I think, is a pure cross-training session. So now these are going to be 2 days off with no run stimulus. Sunday, no running. Monday, no running. But now you're going for your 60 to 75 minutes of cross-training. And I think it's very important to hit a heavy strength stimulus on that day, like neurologically, like hormone production, like get back under, but don't beat your legs up too much. Like just some light work on the lower, but like heavy upper. Just get the systems going that way, like the anaerobic or the anabolic side of things. I think is really helps my recovery. A heavy upper strength session and just maybe some body weight lower work, just to work the range of motion, right? We talk about strength work is mobility work in disguise. So like this last week, I did like 25-pound goblet squats, which is a joke for me, but I went deep and worked through the range. I did body weight Bulgarian split squats and just with no weight and just sat at that lower range for like 3 seconds, came back up. Just let the joints open up. So all that is to propel the recovery front. That's Monday, cross-training and strength. Tuesday is my first recovery run. And I'm going chill. I'm watching my heart rate like a hawk. I am not letting that thing give above whatever rev limiter I set. And I may go for my typical 60 to 70 minutes there, which for me is a typical duration of a recovery run at this point. Wednesday, exactly as you said, Brakken, you're doing a quick touch of the systems. I like this on the treadmill uphill so I don't take damage. 8 to 10 minutes of work, maybe 12 for some people. Like, I don't know. What do you think of that like number? Like how much work? Like it could be 8 by 1 minute. It could be 4 by 2 minutes. What do you think?
I'm laughing because my absolute go-to bridge workout is 60-60 times 8 to 10.
Yeah, there you go.
You just said it. I do 8 to 10 minutes of work, maybe like a minute at a time. Yeah, that's it. 8 to 10 by 60-60. 60 seconds fast, 60 seconds totally rest for me. I'm not jogging.
Yep.
I'm just step off the treadmill. I have a specific memory of getting out to California 2 days early for a National Series race. And the travel's been funky and it's Thursday evening and I'm on the treadmill to do my workout and I'm going to do 60-60 and I end up stopping at 8 because I started to feel good.
Oh,
First 3 were creaky. 4, 5, 6 were starting to warm up. 7, 8 started to feel good. Great. Pull the plug. I've reminded my body I can feel good running fast. Do not run a second longer than that. I'm good.
yeah.
That's exactly how I approach it.
Yeah,
And that was a Thursday. I didn't get to do it on a Wednesday. I was still too beat up. So I waited till Thursday, did 8 minutes of work.
Okay, so we agree on that. And the athletes I coach know, like if it's either between race weeks or it is race week, even if you haven't raced the weeks prior, you're going to see 2-1 intervals, either uphill or flat, and sometimes 3-2-1 uphill or flat. And for me, I do 12 to 15 minutes of work. If I'm in a big training block, I can get away with that, but I'd say safe bet is 8 to 12. And then Thursday for me is another strength day, but I do not do cardio on that day. I'll do an upper strength workout again to just make sure like I'm touching my other systems, the anabolic side of things. Again, I firmly believe as long as you don't have DOMs or you're not hitting your legs, especially heavy, I think it propels the fitness needle forward. So that whole 2 days out, a day off, you can cross train on that day too. If you want to get on the bike or something, I don't think that's going to take away at all.
Yeah.
But for me, a strength workout, an upper focus, moves my recovery again one day quicker. It just works. And then Friday's an easy shakeout run, and then you show up Saturday and you say, all right, the cards will fall where they fall. So the weeks aren't any different. Strength is an important part of my week leading in, and then I think the 2 days of no running after the race is important as well. Again, that's just for me. Those are my rules. They don't need to be yours, but that's how specifically I would approach that week, like down to the T.
Mm-hmm. I do like strength work in there. And on the day after, and sometimes 2 days after, my favorite workout for just feeling good is I do a full warm-up. That's my entire workout, is a warm-up. So I start like I'm going to do a big lift session. So I go all the way through my bench, deadlift, squat, and probably overhead press or lat pull down warm-up. Warm-up exercises, warm-up reps and sets. And then right as the work would start, I'm feeling loose, like the first prickles of sweat are starting. Mm-hmm. And then I go hop on the bike or hike on the incline trainer for like 10 or 15 minutes and I'm done. It's the warm up. The thing that gets me loose to work out is the thing that gets me away from my nasty soreness to the point where I feel like, oh, I can move a little bit now. And that's the workout. That's my probably most done day after race recovery process that works for me.
I like that. And to reiterate, rest isn't the fastest way to recover often when you're on a short window, meaning like sitting around doing nothing. Movement is recovery. Like you have to emphasize that. And so to pound that point home. And just to maybe dial in a little more on what you're saying. So for example, I'm going to take a guess at what you mean. Let's say you are doing a 5x5 program on back squat and you're up to 225 for your reps. You would do warm-up weight at 95 pounds, and then you'd go to 135, and then you'd throw 185 on there as warm-up sets, and then pull the plug at that point instead. Instead of ever getting to the working sets, You're doing the warm-up phases, and then done. That's what you're outlining.
Yes.
Love it.
Exactly. And all the little ancillary things I do to get ready for that first warm-up set, that's all part of the process. I do that on each of the lifts. And so it's like a 20-minute or 25-minute session. And right at the end, I start like the first hint of sweat. And that seems to coincide with the juices are flowing. You got your synapses firing. And all right, my body is starting to wake up a little bit and feel okay. Yeah. And then I'm cleared to do whatever I'm going to do. Am I going to jog for 10 minutes or am I going to spin for 60 or am I going to go back to the couch now and lay back down? But that's to me, I've never felt better recovery than doing that.
I love when those synapses are firing.
Ooh, baby.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, like, with what you just outlined there, I might cut all that weight in half. I might do a set of 45, 95, 135, done. That's it.
Full range. That's key.
Full range.
Yeah.
Full engagement. Treating it like I'm about to do something big next. getting geared up for it, and then stopping.
I love that, especially for the lower body. On the upper body, I actually like going heavy and like hard. Like I really like if I'm gonna bench, screw it. I'm gonna put all the weight on there. I don't care. That it works. Something to it. But the lower, you have to do what you outlined at most. A lot of times I'll just keep it to body weight, even if I'm real beat up. Okay. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Anything else you want to add to the 1 week between before we jump to the 2 weeks between, which is where you do treat them differently. So I'm curious what your take is.
Yeah. I'll just wrap it up with a little bow tie of 1 week between is time for all the voodoo practices. Ice baths, flossing, all your cryotherapy, like whatever it is that works for you.
Flossing?
1 week between is your time to go crazy.
What do you mean
that.
flossing?
Yeah, those thick, wide rubber bands that you wrap around your muscles and then release, and
I was like, this isn't
blood
time for
occlusion therapy,
dental hygiene, or that dumb dance. I wasn't sure. I didn't know.
You should always be flossing, Kirk, and you should never be dancing for TikTok. And that's probably all the world needs to know.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, that's fine. Because half the time those work, half the time they don't work, and it probably is skewed more towards the don't work. But 1 week apart is the time for placebos. Anything that's going to get you geared up and ready for race day, you do. But things like contrast therapy, doing the ice bath thing, there's no study that shows it works long term. Not one. Mm-hmm. But there are plenty that show it turns you around quicker for a quick getting back to it. So typically I say you only do it when you're like racing back-to-back days or you need a big effort the next day. But 1 week apart, your next workout is kind of part of that process. So I'm okay with doing it for that. Get your inflammation down, even if it's beneficial long-term to have inflammation. With the 1 week apart, let's just not mess with it. Go ahead and do all your practices for recovery that you can do. I'm on board with that.
I agree with you there, except don't stretch the crap out of everything in your body to the point where you become just a flaccid rubber band.
No.
That's no good. Just don't go stretch crazy. Don't do that. Static stretch crazy. But all the other stuff I agree with.
Nope.
See your chiropractor.
When in doubt,
do those things.
avoid flaccidity.
I just don't never want to be too flaccid. All right. 2 week cycle. Why don't you kick that one off? 2 weeks between races. Kick it off.
So 2 weeks I start out roughly the same first 3 days, but instead of trying to get to something that is a skill work by Wednesday, I'm okay if it goes back to Thursday and then it's like 2/3 of a real workout. So this is where I'm doing my minimum effective dose, where I'm doing my maintenance dose of work. I'm not worried about skill yet, or just like get whatever I can without taking any damage. We can take a little bit, but it's like a 2/3 or a 3/4 workout. And then my goal is to do that again by Saturday or Sunday. And then again by Tuesday or Wednesday, and then coast back into the race. Now, one of those three might be a full-on workout, depending. Now, if let's say this is Colorado me, 2 of those 3 are going to be full workouts again. If this is current me right now, 1 of those 3 is going to be a full workout. If this was me 4 weeks ago, not one of those is going to be a full workout. The point of this is to handle whatever dose you can handle without setting yourself back. Try to build a little bit of fitness, but not at the expense of doing any damage, and then stroll back into the next race. So I'll let you go details again on that. And I can talk about some of the workouts I do like for that, but that's my overarching view.
I had somebody, I think it was our social media guy, Zoom. He puts together our clips. We put them up there, but he puts them together. And he said, it's annoying. It would be better if you guys didn't always agree so much on stuff, because it would give us better things to work with. Like if you would argue once in a while. And I'm like, you're not wrong. We rarely butt heads on philosophy. And unfortunately, I could not agree with you more again. The 2/3 thing, for example, guess what? My first quality session after my half marathon, normally in this session, I would do 6 reps. I did 4. What does that come out to? 2/3. What did I do? I did 4 by 500 foot gain intervals instead of 6 by 500 foot gain intervals. 2/3 volume of what I would have normally done, but kept the intensity where I wanted it. So verbatim 2/3. Like the math works out perfectly there. You know that, Brakken. You're great at math. So, and then guess where my full session comes in?
I'll take your word for it.
So This is the time, this 2 weeks in between races is not the time for volume. In fact, my volume was down 10 to 15 miles a week in this middle section. It is the time to still touch the sharp side of the systems without overdoing it. So your long run, the weekend between, not happening. Yeah. In between, what I strongly suggest is a little bit of spice again in there, but you may be going 45 minutes shorter than you would typically on your long run, an hour shorter. And so what I like is that 2/3 session midweek, exactly as you said, and then Saturday, where your long run day in quotes might typically be, is some version of a quality session again, maybe in and out of threshold intervals or hill repeats, but your total volume from the session is down from what a typical Saturday effort would be. So I'm actually touching quality twice that week after the race. First is a 2/3 session, and then that weekend is going to be, I call it running through the gears or just prepping your body for what's next weekend. But I may only spend 75 minutes instead of 2 hours on foot that day. And if I ever feel like I'm reaching too much, I'm going to back it off. Like I want to work hard, but in control work hard, not let's see what I'm made of on this session hard. And then I start that weekly lead-in process again. You basically show up available by touching systems midweek, 12 to 15 minutes of work in that one quality session. Again, before your second race in the 2 weeks, and we repeat sort of that cycle. So maybe a little more specifics there. And then I will hit my legs. I will give myself like a true leg session in there that first week coming out of race number 1. I will touch those systems, maybe back off a hair. Maybe I'll back off 10% on the weights I'm using, which is enough just not to wreck me, but enough to touch the stimulus. What you call maintenance mode, that would be what I'd call maintenance lifting. Yep. I don't know if I'm missing anything there, but that'd be my snapshot.
Well, I like it. And I'll do some specifics this time. My number one most often completed maintenance quality session, call it 2/3, 3/4, 7/8, whatever you want to do for a percentage for how far you take it, is the 1, 2, 3 fartlek.
Love it.
And I like choosing fartleks for maintenance work because you can get out of them whatever you want to get out of them, and the metrics don't have to mess with you mentally. So you nod in your head.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, the 3-2-1 fartlek, or I like the 5-4-3-2-1. I'll go up as far as 5 minute, but I won't go longer than 5 minute intervals on that. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. 5-4-3-2-1 or 3-2-1 with like a jog recovery.
Yeah, and I like to do it on the trails. Jog recovery. Yep. I like to do it on the trails with jog recovery. And I like that because on 1, 2, and 3 minute trail intervals, I choose a kind of flowy, twisty trail. You can feel really fast on this workout. Just ripping down a trail at a pace faster than you'd ever run on a trail race, but it's probably not actually that fast. Like you're probably running 10K pace or so, but on a trail that feels very fast. Mm-hmm. And so it builds confidence. And then because you're doing a jog or float recovery on a trail, you end up probably going a little slower than you normally would on float recoveries for a fartlek. And it's okay because you're not trying to build crazy fitness. You're trying to maintain your fitness, but you're trying to feel good. And this is my best feel good workout I have. 1 minute on, 1 minute off, 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, 3 off. And I'll do 2 rounds of that is my 2/3 workout. 3 rounds is my full workout, sometimes 4. The other version, if I want to do more reps but not get more work, is I go 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So it's like a little mountain range rather than a up and reset. But either way, it doesn't matter. Those are the time domains I work in and the effort range I work in. And it's like running an 8 to a 9 effort on the ons and probably like a 5 on the offs, maybe a 4. Just coasting. And that's my first workout or my last workout, and sometimes both. The in-between workout, I just find myself going back to like 8 by 3 minutes.
Sure. It's a great one.
Retouch on the threshold. Simple. Do it uphill. You're set.
Yeah. I mean, talk about practicing what we preach. So the weekend prior to Grandma's half, I did 5-4-3-2-1 fartlek on rolling cement.
There you go. And
that was half recovery around 7 minute pace. And then I was pressing at half pace or faster for my intervals. And then the week between the races, I really like the 5-2. So I did 5 rounds of 5 minutes on, 2 minutes off. 5-2. You could do 3-1 or 390 intervals, just like you talked about. You're really splitting hairs here, similar systems, but those are the ones we would pick. I picked those.
Same work. Whatever
same work.
feels best for you.
Exactly. So, and then I think you can play with terrain. Like if that's something you wanted to hit on the trails. Like I like the trails because it becomes less objective, or picking even a hilly road route where like, okay, I don't have to microanalyze the paces I'm at, which could get in your head for race day. If you're heady like most of us are, I like something where you're like, okay, well, I don't really know what this data means. I almost prefer to go off effort for these workouts instead of like trying to nail a pacing. I think that's productive in that regard. Yeah. Save nailing the pacing for race day, in my opinion. But, yeah. And then is there anything like people are so curious about nutrition and diet, man? Like we got a number of questions for a Q&A recently about like nutrition, diet. Are you thinking about any of that in between any of this?
This is a tough one because I like to give myself permission to eat what my body wants after a race. But I'm also a big inflammation guy. I have a lot of it. So I do have to be careful to avoid things that spark up more inflammation. So avoiding too much sugar, things like that. If my body, luckily my body craves salt more than sugar, so I don't have to worry about it too much. But you want to ride that fine line between don't restrict your body when it's trying to recover after a big effort, but don't fuel it with things that are also going to set you back later in the week.
Yep.
2 weeks timeline, it's a little bit easier. 1 week, I really have to fight the inflammation battle.
Yeah, I find...
But it's hydration,
yep,
and it's eating enough.
Get enough salt, get enough water, and you're going to be fine. I find cutting out the sugar and the crap is a fast track for me to feel better and lighter on my feet. Even though we think we want dense, sugary, quick fuel calories, I find if I start doing too much of that to make up for calories or oversaturate or justify dessert after dinner every night because I need to charge up, that's just a way to feel gunky and sticky versus like open and clean. I don't know how else to describe it. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. The inflammation game, and yes, folks, diet impacts systemic inflammation without question, and sugar leads the way. Probably sugar and booze, those two things, like that's not going to help you very much if you're looking to recover fast.
Right.
Things like that.
And that's the big thing, right? Get done with the race, have your IPAs, grow out your mustache, and have a bunch of like donuts. That's like the stereotypical trail runner thing. Mm-hmm. But if you're turning around for another race, it's certainly not helpful.
Maybe afternoon in a race, sure, of course, and then right back to buttoning up the remainder of the week between. Mm-hmm. What else do we need to chat out with this? I know we could have gone a lot of directions, right? Like, hey, what if we're racing 4 times in 6 weeks, or what? We could draw this thing out further. I think what I said in the beginning, I think is just important to, whether you're racing 3 out of 4 weekends or 5 out of 8 weekends or whatever. Summer, like if you want to race, and now's the time, we're in the thick of it, in the north anyways. I know you folks in the south with all the heat, the races are sparing this time of year, but there needs to be a time of training and taking damage and being a little overreaching and training, recovering, adapting, that whole cycle before this block of racing. And then you need a period of time to either reset and then get back to foundational work for a bit before you go into another cluster of races where because you will wither away eventually. You will start to erode and then maybe not be as happy with your results. So this isn't a sustainable thing. You need to make sure you have an exit strategy as well, meaning like, hey, I'm not booking anything for 6 to 8 weeks and I'm going to get back to work. Or at least if I do have a race, it's a training race and it's not something that I need to be super available for. So just, I think the tough thing is the people who race every 2 weeks all year. Like every 2 weeks all year, like what is the right balance?
That's the hardest.
So hard. So I just wanted to put that out there as like a little bit of an end cap on this conversation.
Yeah. The important thing to remember is that the most specific work you can do to get better at racing is a race. Yep. And you just did that. So you've checked the box as fully and completely as you can possibly check it. And that's the biggest stimulus and best, most effective stimulus you can come up with.
Yep.
So just rest on that. Know that you don't have to push for more. So Kirk, if we go back in time, yourself, myself, we got to the end of track season in college, and we would race 8 to 12 times in 4 weeks. Probably minimum. Then getting into OCR at the end of a season, I'd probably race 4 times in 4 weeks some seasons, 3 times in 4 weeks. I've done a 1-mile road race and a 50K trail race 10 days apart. I've done the Spartan World Championship and a 5-mile trail race 7 days apart. I've done all those versions of this, and all of them, I have never once paid the price for reducing volume and keeping maintenance doses of speed in there.
Yep.
Up to a month, I continue to get faster and sharper if I drop volume and keep doing consistent 2/3 speed workouts. You can make it an entire month of getting better because the races provide such big stimulus, especially if you're a trail racer. You're still getting your long run during your race. So you can make it a full month of improving on this schedule. You just have to trust the fact that the races are doing a huge amount of work for your fitness.
Yes. Yeah. The races are big fitness jumps and stimulus in itself. So, in fact, if you tried to keep up the same training you did prior to the clusters of races, you'd show up to the start lines flat. So the races become the stimulus. Reminds me of the conversation we had with Kevin Donahue, who was racing weekend after weekend. I don't know how many hundreds of podiums he had been on. It's like, what is your training like? He's like, I race, and then I get available to race again, and then I race again. And I pretty much just, this is a cycle of like just being available for the next weekend, and that is my training stimulus. And it's an interesting way to look at it, but it's true if you're one of those who races all the time. I don't think it's the way to reach your true
races
ceiling.
To me count as 2 quality sessions.
Oh, 2, huh?
That's the way I look at it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a double quality session on one day, or it's worth the recovery of 2 quality sessions. So what kind of racer are you? Well, I'm a trainer. I'm a 2 a week quality with another half. All right, so you get the half during the week.
Right.
That's your ratio. That's your equation. You got 2 on the weekend. You only need your half now. If you're a 3 a week person, you can handle a full during the week because you got 2 on race day. That's my simple rule for how do we keep ourselves feeling calm that we're getting enough work. Race days are worth double quality.
Especially longer races. Like if it's a 5K, I mean,
long races, yes.
You can take some damage for it. If you go ahead and all out 5K, like sell your soul to the devil 5K, you might want to count it as 2 as well, depending on how much you squeeze out of yourself. But yeah, races over what? Half hour, 45 minutes. We start talking that, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we gave you folks at home something to think about, and I'm hoping maybe this impacts your training decisions between close proximity races. Do you have anything else you want to add to the end of this, baby?
Just a semi-rhetorical question. What is the best ability, Kirk?
Availability.
That is your North Star. Get to the next race available.
I think that's the best way to end this thing. You know, you get to the next race available, and stealing your words, like you're in the don't mess it up phase if the races are tight. Don't mess it up. Just don't screw it up.
Yep.
Hay's in the barn. Just make sure you can open the door and use it on race day. That's all you got to worry about. All right. Well, and hey, if you guys listened on Thursday, it ended up being a little bit of a gong show, or last week's, Friday episode. Hopefully, Brakken, did you smooth that one out on the editing side?
It was a nightmare. I didn't even get it out till Saturday because things just were also happening during the episode. Like you, at times, were suddenly like 1.5 speed or garbled.
Yeah, we had a tough go.
So we have our cloud recording and we have our regular recording, and I had to switch your files between those back and forth.
Ugh.
Like if you saw it, if one was red and one was green, yours would alternate red and green the whole episode because at times it just didn't. Suddenly it's like because you were a host, it compromised your file. It was so strange. It was just a nightmare of unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah. Brakken's internet literally went out. Nick's laptop died at the end. We got disconnected. It was just a mess. So if you listened and couldn't tell, great. And if you could, well, we did what we could there. Sorry about that. But just thought we should mention that turned into a gong show. But we got the content and the conversation
it was.
We needed out there. So, all right, now we're rambling. Let's wrap it up. We'll see you guys later this week.
Wrap it.